Everything in Cancer's life lately has not been loud. There were no dramatic collapses, no explosive confrontations, just a long stretch of quiet days. Silence used to endure. Silence used to observe. Silence used to wonder whether it was still worth holding on to everything that had never been said. That's how Cancer lives. You're used to carrying emotions for other people, used to stepping back just to keep the peace, used to swallowing words that should have been spoken a long time ago. But the universe doesn't allow energy to stay buried forever. What gets suppressed always finds a way out. And if you're listening to this right now, there's a good chance you're standing at a moment just like that. A sentence, a truth, a message that can't be avoided anymore. Not to hurt you, but to bring an ending to a long season of uncertainty in your life. So stay with me just a little longer, because what's about to be spoken next may be the very beginning of an entirely new trajectory for Cancer. A new current begins to move through Cancer's life, very quietly, not loud, not showy, but clear enough that you can feel it through your intuition. After a long stretch of having to manage everything in silence, of holding yourself together between responsibility and emotion, you start to notice the rhythm around you shifting. Things are no longer frozen in place. The invisible walls that once made you hesitate begin to crack. Not because you forced them down, but because you've grown. You're steadier now, and you no longer fit inside the space that once kept you contained. Money, work, opportunity. Everything begins to move at the same time, as if someone gently turned a gear that had been stuck for far too long. News arrives at unexpected moments. A conversation that feels casual on the surface opens an entirely new direction. An offer that was once overlooked returns, seen through a completely different lens. You no longer have to chase the flow. The flow is coming to you. And what's interesting is that as things begin to move more freely, you don't feel anxious. You don't feel greedy. Instead, you feel calm. A very Cancer kind of calm, the kind that comes from realizing, for the first time, that you deserve to receive without having to explain yourself. Your value, something you've carried for years but rarely heard acknowledged, now becomes visible in the eyes of others. The people who once watched quietly, who kept their distance, who were unsure where to place you, they can't look away anymore. Not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped shrinking yourself to meet other people's expectations. You no longer have to talk endlessly about your abilities or the weight you've carried. Your presence alone now carries weight. Cancer has always been used to giving first, enduring first, waiting to be recognized last. But this phase brings a very different lesson. Recognition arrives the moment you stop, making it the goal. When you stop trying to prove your worth, the world quietly rearranges itself to reflect it back to you. This isn't just a story about money or achievement. It's a story about no longer doubting yourself, no longer asking if you've done enough. You have done enough for a very long time. The truth is, the world around you is only now catching up to who you've already become. Stability begins forming on the inside before it ever shows up on the outside. You feel it in the way you make decisions. Less hesitation, less asking for permission, less need for someone else to confirm you're on the right path. A strange but grounding feeling appears, like standing upright in your own life for the first time without leaning on anyone else. And from that place, money, opportunity, and recognition find you naturally, without force, without compromise, without costing you your dignity. But as the light grows clearer, something deeper inside you begins to wake up. You realize that what's arriving isn't just here to make life easier, but to prepare you for a more important choice ahead. Outer abundance creates inner space, space for truth, for real emotion, for connections no longer built on fear or lack. Your heartbeat slows, but your awareness sharpens. You begin to notice subtle signals that were once buried under pressure and responsibility. And as you continue forward, without rushing and without turning back, the story moves beyond recognition. It gently shifts toward a deeper question. Who truly wants to enter your world? Who can no longer endure silence? And who will be forced to face their own emotions when standing in front of the quiet, steady strength of an awakened Cancer? The silence between you and that person was never truly peaceful. It was like calm water on the surface, hiding a powerful current underneath, where emotions were being compressed day after day. They grew used to keeping a composed exterior, speaking in safe sentences, choosing just enough distance so they wouldn't have to face the truth inside themselves. But the longer it lasted, the more chaotic it became on the inside. Thoughts looping, questions with no answers, feelings that were never acknowledged colliding with each other, building pressure that could no longer be contained. And then, almost inevitably, a contact appears. Not loud, not dramatic. It might be a very short message, a phone call that seems to come out of nowhere, or a casual check-in, disguised as light concern. But you feel it immediately. This isn't impulsive. This is the result of a long inner struggle. The moment when they can no longer stay calm enough to pretend that everything is fine. Cancer senses this shift clearly. You hear it in the slightly slower pace of their voice, in the pauses between sentences, in the careful way they choose their words. Behind the roundabout tone is a very real fear. A question they don't dare ask right away. Do they still have a place in your world? Is the door they once walked away from, once neglected, once took for granted, still open? This conversation carries no social energy. It isn't about polite catching up. It isn't about keeping appearances. It carries the weight of lost time, of things left unsaid, of opportunities that slipped away. You feel it in your body, a sensation that is both familiar and unfamiliar, where your heart recognizes this is not a moment to treat lightly. Every word now has the power to reshape the connection between you. What's different this time is that Cancer is no longer in a vulnerable position. You're no longer waiting anxiously for someone else's signal to validate your worth. You've walked far enough to understand that your peace is not something to be negotiated. That steadiness unsettles them even more. They sense that you've changed, that you're no longer predictable, that you're no longer willing to wait unconditionally, and that realization forces them to face their own truth, whether they want to or not. This is a moment with no gray area, no half promises, no in-between connections meant to soothe temporary emotions. The energy of this contact is decisive. Either they step forward with genuine honesty, ready to take responsibility for their feelings, or everything closes cleanly, so no one remains trapped in waiting or vague hope. Cancer may realize something very profound here. You don't need to say much to have impact. Your calm presence alone is enough to make someone reflect on themselves. You don't force an answer. You don't issue ultimatums. But your intentional silence, the clarity in your eyes, and the way you listen naturally guide the conversation to a point that cannot be avoided. And as the contact slowly comes to an end, no matter the outcome, you feel an inner door open. Not a door to the past, but one that leads deeper inward. A place where you begin to understand that real connection doesn't come from holding on, but from mutual willingness. The current of the story doesn't stop here. It quietly carries you closer to an encounter, a vibration, a moment where emotion and truth collide in a way no one will be able to remain composed anymore. This meeting, if it happens, will not enter your life gently. It doesn't come to check in. It doesn't come to revisit a few old memories and quietly walk away. It arrives like an electric current running straight through your emotions, strong enough to remind you that some things, no matter how deeply they were put to sleep, never truly disappeared. The moment your eyes meet, Cancer knows. This is not an ordinary encounter. No one needs to speak first. No long explanations are required. Some truths travel much faster than words, and you feel them clearly inside your own body. The air around you seems to slow down. Other sounds fade into the background, making space for a familiar feeling you once tried very hard to forget. That look carries everything that was never said, questions that were held back, emotions pushed down out of fear of disrupting the balance. And in that moment, the silence between you becomes heavier than any explanation ever could. Your heart reacts before your mind has time to speak, as if your body already understands what your thoughts are still debating. Emotions rise without a clear order, not explosive at first, but deep enough that you can't ignore them. A bit of confusion, a quiet stirring, a layer of caution. Cancer is skilled at hiding emotion, but in this moment, you realize that not everything needs to be protected. Truth begins to surface through the smallest details. The way they hold your gaze a little longer than usual. The way they choose silence instead of a safe sentence. The way their breathing grows heavier as the space between you closes. Most important of all, this feeling doesn't come from one side only. You sense the reflection clearly, the thoughts you've carried, the questions you asked yourself during your quietest moments. They're carrying nearly the same ones. This is a powerful resonance where two inner worlds touch without planning, without effort. But alongside that harmony comes a very real fear. The fear that speaking up will change everything. The fear that staying silent will erase the chance entirely. The fear that if one more step is taken, there will be no way back. Ego begins to speak on both sides. It brings up old wounds, past disappointments, distances that once existed, misunderstandings never fully resolved. Cancer feels this tension clearly because you're standing between two opposing poles. One side wants safety, wants to protect the peace you've only just rebuilt. The other wants honesty, wants to move toward the emotion knocking insistently at the door. The hesitation isn't a lack of feeling, it's the awareness that this cannot be handled lightly. That moment feels like standing in front of a very clear mirror. You see in them what you once tried to hide in yourself. Unspoken desires, the fear of being left behind, the longing to be chosen fully and without conditions. That reflection makes it impossible to keep avoiding the truth. You begin to understand that this meeting didn't come to break you, but to show you how much you've grown in the way you face emotion. You stop rushing for answers. You allow yourself to feel every vibration, every pause, every look that hasn't finished its sentence. A gentle truth slowly takes shape in the space between you. When two people are willing to look directly at their feelings, without blame, without defense, without trying to control the outcome, a very different kind of connection forms. Not loud, not dramatic, but deep enough to reach the soul. Cancer begins to understand that real emotional resonance doesn't throw you off balance. It brings you back to who you truly are. And when the meeting comes to an end, no matter how it unfolds, you carry something very clear with you. The sense that inner doors have just opened, wide enough for light to enter, wide enough for you to move forward with a gentle kind of courage, ready for the quiet shifts still unfolding in the story of your life. And from that moment on, a very different movement begins to take shape inside you. Not the kind of change that arrives loudly and turns everything upside down all at once, but a clear sense of lightness. Like setting down a suitcase you've been carrying for so long, you no longer remember what's inside it. Cancer realizes there's no longer the strength to keep holding on to things that exist only out of habit, out of memory, or out of fear of starting over. This release doesn't come from an impulsive decision. It's formed through many quiet nights of reflection, through moments when you ask yourself why you feel exhausted, even when you haven't done anything extreme. You begin to look directly at relationships that require you to strain just to be understood, at environments that force you to shrink your emotions to fit the space around you, and at an older version of yourself that fulfilled its role a long time ago. Letting go no longer feels like loss. It feels like an act of self-care, deliberate, gentle, and deeply conscious. Life responds to this shift very quickly. Big decisions appear without asking permission, without waiting for you to feel completely ready. It might be a work-related choice, a new direction you once believed you didn't have the courage to try. It might be a change in where you live, or simply a different way you choose to show up in your own life. Each change carries a trace of uncertainty, but it no longer sends you into panic. You begin to trust that this feeling of not knowing isn't a sign of failure, but proof that you're leaving behind an outdated comfort zone. At first, things can feel unsteady. There are days when you think back to what once felt familiar and wonder if you're being too hard on the past. But clarity arrives quickly. You notice your breathing ease, your sleep deepen. You no longer have to convince yourself to stay in places that drain you. Cancer understands that without this shift, life would continue looping in the same familiar pattern, where stability is only a surface layer covering stagnation. What matters most is that you don't leave in bitterness. You walk away with kindness toward yourself and toward what once mattered. You don't need to turn the past into an enemy in order to move forward. You only need to admit that you've grown, and that what once fit is no longer spacious enough for who you are now. This kind of maturity doesn't make you colder. It makes you more honest about your emotional needs. In the space created after setting down that weight, a new energy begins to move in. It doesn't rush to fill the emptiness. It gives you time to meet yourself again in a lighter state. You learn to make choices not from the fear of being left behind, but from a sense of being respected. You begin rebuilding your life from the most basic foundations, but this time, everything rests on something sturdier. Cancer slowly realizes that major change doesn't always come to destroy. Sometimes it comes to rearrange. What remains after this period carries a different quality, less but more real, slower but deeper. You no longer need to chase any model to feel like you're living correctly, and in that very personal quiet, a sense of peace begins to form, as if you finally stepped into the right place on your path, ready to receive what's quietly moving toward you, with a lighter heart and a calm, steady trust in what lies ahead. And then, within that very personal stillness, you realize you're no longer standing in the dark, not because a spotlight turned on outside of you, but because something inside has grown bright enough to finally see yourself clearly. Cancer steps forward with a completely different posture than before, no longer needing so much armor, no longer needing to explain why you're sensitive, no longer apologizing for emotions that were once treated like a burden. You understand now that this was never a weakness, but the way you experience life more fully than most. This rebirth isn't loud. It happens quietly, like waking up one morning and realizing you're no longer carrying that familiar heaviness. You begin living at your own pace, speaking more slowly, listening more deeply, and choosing more carefully who is allowed into your emotional space. A gentle kind of self-respect forms, not defensive, but grounded in understanding. You no longer need to prove that you're strong because you already know you survived everything that came before. Within this new space, a different kind of connection begins to appear, not through display, not through grand promises, but through a clear sense of safety, like sitting next to someone without having to think about who you're supposed to be. This love isn't shallow. It doesn't test you with silence. It doesn't play emotional push and pull. There are no power games, no moves that force you to guess where you stand. Everything is clear in a very gentle way. You don't have to read between the lines because what matters is placed right in front of you. Cancer feels the difference immediately. You no longer have to strain to hold a connection together. You no longer sacrifice your peace for attention. The person who comes toward you now isn't drawn to your endurance or your endless giving, but to who you truly are. They see depth in your eyes, sincerity in the way you listen, and strength behind your softness. They stay, not because they're afraid of losing you, but because they genuinely want to walk beside you. Of course, as the light grows clearer, movement around you follows. There may be envy, there may be uneasy glances, there may be attempts to pull you off your path. But this time, it doesn't shake you the way it once did. You're no longer swayed by outside noise because you know exactly what belongs to you. Cancer understands that what is meant for you doesn't need to be fought for. It arrives through alignment with life itself, and no one can take away what is built on truth and respect. The greatest change isn't in your circumstances, but in the question inside you. You no longer ask if you're good enough. You no longer measure your worth through other people's eyes. The doubt that followed you for so long begins to dissolve, making room for a quiet certainty. You know you deserve to be loved fully. You deserve to be chosen without sacrificing yourself. And more importantly, you allow yourself to receive it without guilt. Cancer enters this phase with a silent but very clear decision. You choose happiness, not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. You choose love, not to fill a void, but to expand a world inside you that is already whole. You choose yourself every day in the smallest of decisions. And when you stand in that place, life stops feeling like a series of trials to survive. It becomes a journey lived at the right pace, where you walk slowly, steadily, and with full trust that you are exactly where you're meant to be.